Tiny living gets marked into like a miracle solution. You see the videos, the tours, the perfectly staged 240 square foot homes with soft lighting, smiling owners, zero clutter, and captions that say things like no mortgage, no stress, total freedom. And if you watch enough of that content, it starts to sound almost too good to be true. Which leads to a fair question. Is tiny living a scam? Is this whole movement just clever marketing wrapped around unrealistic expectation? And today, I want to walk through this honestly, without hype and without hate, because tiny living is not a scam, but the way it's often sold absolutely can be misleading. And if you go into it with the wrong expectation, it can cost you money, comfort, and sanity. So let's start with the core promise you hear most often. All right. Tiny living is cheaper. That's the headlines claim, right? Smaller house equals smaller cost. And on the surface, that makes sense. Okay. Less material, less space, lower price, simple math. But in the real world, the numbers are more complicated than that. A professionally built tiny house can easily cost as much as a small traditional home per square foot, and sometimes more. Custom carpentry, compact appliances, trailers, speciality in storage, and an off-grid system drives the price up. People are shocked when a well-built tiny house comes in at the price of a condo down payment. That sticker shock is where some people start yelling scam, but it's not a scam. It's a niche product with niche construction costs. The scam feels comes from when marketing only shows the cheapest do-it-yourself success stories and not the typical finished price. Another big promise is no bills or no housing payment. That one needs serious unpacking here. Tiny living can reduce monthly expenses, but eliminate them rarely. You still pay for land or land rent or parking fees. You still pay for utilities or off-grid system maintenance. You still pay for insurance, repairs, propane, internet, and transportation. Some tiny house communities charge lot rent that rivals apartment rent, and off grid systems wear out and need replaced. Batteries are not forever, okay? Solar components are not forever. Composting toilets are not zero cost. And when influencers say, I live for almost nothing, they often leave out land arrangements or shared resources or earlier capital costs. That's not always dishonest, but it is often incomplete. And there's also the freedom narrative that tiny living automatically creates a simpler, happier life, a smaller space, a fewer possessions, less stress. That part can be true, okay, but it is not automatic. Tiny living removes storage spaces and not emotional baggage. If someone struggles with clutter or disorganization or impulse buying, a tiny house doesn't fix that. It magnifies it. If a couple struggles with communication, 300 square feet won't heal that. It will pressure it. And some people move tiny expecting a lifestyle transformation, instead get a lifestyle confrontation. And when expectations and reality collide, they call the movement fake. But the issue, it wasn't fraud, it was mismatch. And let's talk about resale value because this is another pain point. Traditional houses often appreciate over time. Tiny houses, especially on wheels, usually depreciate like RVs. And that surprises buyers who bought they were making a real estate investment. Tiny houses are often better compared to specialty vehicles or cabins than to standard homes. That doesn't make them scams, but it does make them poor investments. If you expect appreciation, their lifestyle purchases first, financial investments second. And when people buy with wrong expectation, disappointment follows. Social media presentation adds fuel to the confusion too. Online, tiny living is shown at its best angles, best living, best day. You don't see, the condensation problems, the storage juggling, the ladder climbs at 2 a.m., the zoning fights, the winter insulation upgrades, or the summer overheating fixes. That's not unique to tiny living. That's how all lifestyle media works. But it hits harder here because people make major housing decisions based on that content. Inspiration content is not operations reality, though. It's not. Another accusation behind the scam label is that tiny house builders overcharge. And here's the truth, some do, okay? And some don't. Just like any construction field, there are excellent builders, average builders, and bad builders. There are also unrealistic buyers who underestimate material and labor costs. Custom small home builds are labor intensive. Tight spaces take more precision, not less. A bad contract or a vague spec sheet causes more trouble than the size of the house. This is a due diligence issue, not a movement wide scam. And let's flip the lens a little bit because tiny living does deliver real benefits, just not universal ones. Lower total housing cost is possible, especially with do it yourself builds and own land. Utilities use is lower, cleaning time is lower, consumption often drops, and mobility is possible with houses on wheels. Environmental footprints can shrink, financial flexibility can increase, and many people genuinely improve their lives through tiny living. But they succeed because they match the lifestyle to their personality and needs, not because they believe marketing slogans. A big dividing line in outcomes is whether someone is running towards something or running away from something. Running towards simplicity, flexibility, or intentional living that works well, and running away from debt, stress, or dissatisfaction without changing habits, that often fails. Tiny living amplifies behavior patterns. Organized people thrive and adaptable people thrive. Rigid people, they'll struggle. There's also a practical comfort threshold. People don't talk about this enough. Space needs are personal. Some people feel calm in small spaces, others, they feel trapped. Neither is wrong. But if someone ignores their own space needs because tiny living is trendy, regret shows up quickly. Again, not a scam, mismatch. All right. Legal and zoning challenges, they also trigger scam accusations. People say they sold me a tiny house I can't legally park anywhere. But builders are not zoning authorities. Placement legality is location specific. Buyer must verify land rules themselves. It's frustrating, but it's not deceptive. It's not deception at all. It's jurisdictional complexity. Let's address the off-grid angle too. The tiny living often overlaps with off-grid marketing, and that space is full of oversimplified claims. Just add solar and you're free. Real off-grid systems require design, redundancy, and maintenance. Plain and simple. Underbuilt systems, they fail. When people under budget and struggle, they blame the concept instead of the planning gap. Another reason some call tiny living a scam is burnout. Yes, tiny living burnout is real. And some people love it for a year. They want more space. That doesn't mean the first year was fake. It means preferences changed. We accept that with jobs and cities, but expect housing choices to be permanent. They don't have to be. Tiny house living can be a season, not a lifetime. Community fit matters too. People isolate completely, sometimes struggle more than those who place tiny homes within supportive communities or shared land setups. Humans are social. Tiny plus isolated plus stressed equals bad experience. So how do you tell whether tiny living is the right for you instead of falling for the hype? You test before you commit. Rent a tiny house short term. Track your actual space usage in your current home. Try living with half your belongings boxed. Measure your tolerance for small spaces, routines. Price land before you price houses. Run full budgets, not influencer budgets, your budgets. And ask better questions too. Not how cheap can this be, but what will this realistically cost me total? Not can I fit, but can I function? Not is it popular, but is it compatible with how I live? Tiny living is not a scam, but it is frequently oversimplified. It's a powerful option, not a universal solution. It works extremely well for some people and poorly for others. And the difference is expectation, preparation, and personal fit. If you go into tiny living thinking it will automatically solve financial stress, emotional stress, or lifestyle dissatisfaction, you'll probably be disappointed. And if you go into it understanding the trade-offs, space for freedom, convenience for flexibility, or comfort for efficiency, you might love it. The movement isn't fake and the benefits aren't fake, but the highlight reel version is incomplete. And incomplete information is what creates the scam feeling, not the houses themselves. Tiny living is a tool. Used correctly, it builds a great life. Used blindly, it builds frustration. The truth sits in the middle, and now you've got it. Watch some more tips up here on the right in the other video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. And you know what? Stay tiny, because tiny house living is the way to go.